Hey guys, tonight we are venturing into the heart of the 19th century, into the foggy, gaslit streets of Victorian London. But we're not here for Jack the Ripper or Sherlock Holmes. We're on a much more dangerous mission, trying to have a pleasant afternoon walk without committing a catastrophic social foul. You think navigating modern social media is tough? In the world we're about to enter, looking at someone the wrong way, or worse, not looking at them in the precisely correct manner of not minus looking, could get you socially executed. Honestly, your chances of surviving your first high minus society tea party are probably lower than surviving a trip down the Amazon. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Go ahead and drop a comment below with your city and what time it is for you. It's always cool to see where everyone is tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The train groans and hisses, a beast of iron and steam finally coming to rest. For hours, the rhythmic clatter of the wheels has been your only companion, but now it's gone, replaced by a sound you've never heard before: the roar of London. You slide down the carriage window and the smell hits you first, a thick, soupy cocktail of coal smoke, damp wool, and horses. So many horses. You dread that tens of thousands of them work the city streets every day. But you never considered the sheer olfactory reality of that fact. It's the smell of industry, of empire, of a million lives crammed together on one muddy patch of earth by the River Thames. You step down onto the bustling platform of Paddington Station, your worn leather suitcase in hand. The scale of it all is overwhelming. Back in your quiet country town, the arrival of the daily train was an event. Here, it's a minor ripple in an endless ocean of movement. Porters shout, families hustle past, men in top hats read newspapers with an air of immense self-importance. The air is so thick with smoke and fog that the great glass roof of the station seems to vanish into a grey, hazy sky. This isn't just a city, it's a weather system of its own. You, my friend, are armed with a modest inheritance, a decent suit of clothes, and a heart full of hopelessly romantic ambitions. You're here to make your fortune, or your name, or perhaps just to witness the very center of the world. You've read the novels. You've seen the illustrations in the papers. You believe in progress, in propriety, in the idea that a respectable, earnest young person with a bit of dot can find their place in this grand new world. It's a lovely thought, the very essence of the Victorian middle minus class dream. Of course, historians are still locked in debate over whether this obsession with respectability was a genuine moral movement or just a clever way for the new money to imitate the old aristocracy, creating a complex set of rules designed to keep the wrong sort out. You, however, aren't troubled by such cynical thoughts. You believe the rules are there for a reason, to maintain a civilized society. Your lodgings are a set of rented rooms in a respectable, though slightly gloomy, terrace house in Bayswater. The landlady, a woman with a perpetually pursed slipped expression of disapproval, shows you to your quarters. The furniture is dark and heavy. The air smells of beeswax and down. From your window, you can see a seemingly endless vista of rooftops and chimney pots, each one belching its own plume of smoke into the bruised sky. It's lonely, but it's yours. This is your foothold in the greatest city on earth. That first evening, you can't sleep. The city is never truly quiet. The distant clatter of carriage wheels on cobblestones, the faint cry of a street vendor selling oysters, the low rumble of a world that never stops turning its all a terrifying, thrilling lullaby. You lie in your unfamiliar bed, clutching a letter or introduction to a distant cousin of your father's, a man said to be in business in the city. The single piece of paper is your key, your only entry point into the society you hope to join. You imagine yourself attending Cyrese, discussing poetry with thoughtful young ladies, and engaging in vigorous debate with the great minds of the age. You imagine a world of polite conversation, warm welcomes, and shared values. You are, in short, adorably naive. You believe that being a good person is enough. You have yet to learn that in Victorian London, your moral character is far less important than your mastery of the subtle, brutal art of ignoring people correctly. Your first full day in London dawns grey and damp. Determined to embrace your new life, you decide that a brisk walk is in order. Everyone, from the novelists to the gossipy magazines, agrees that Hyde Park is the place to be, the great green lung of the metropolis. You imagine a democratic space, a verdant escape where the city's inhabitants can shed their cares and enjoy a bit of nature. You pull on your best coat, check your reflection in the small, cloudy mirror, and step out into the world, full of a cautious optimism. The park is even grander than you imagined, a vast expanse of rolling lawns, ancient trees, and the glittering silver of the Serpentine Lake. But it is anything but a place of quiet escape. It is a stage, and the performance is in full swing. The pathways are thronged with people, but it's an ordered chaos. Nannies in starched grey uniforms push enormous, elaborate prams. Immaculately dressed ladies stroll in tight knit groups, their parasols held at a precise angle. Gentlemen on horseback, their boots polished to a mirror shine, trot along the famous Rotten Row, and everywhere there are carriages sleek, lacquered boxes drawn by perfectly matched horses, parading their wealthy occupants in a slow, endless loop. This is not a walk, it's a review. It is the church parade, the unspoken Sunday ritual where society comes to inspect itself. You feel clumsy and out of place, a provincial sparrow in a flock of exotic peacocks. You stick to the less crowded paths, an observer on the fringes of this great social theatre. And then, through the crowd, you see him. It's a young man named Peterson, from a town not far from your own. You were never close friends, but you certainly knew each other well enough to exchange a pleasantry. Seeing a familiar face in this overwhelming sea of strangers feels like finding a life raft. A wave of genuine relief and pleasure washes over you. He is walking with a young woman in a rather fashionable bonnet, and they are heading your way. This is your chance, a small connection to the world you understand. As he draws near, you catch his eye, and you see a flicker of clear recognition. You give him a broad, friendly smile. You raise your hand in a small, eager wave, and you open your mouth to call out a cheerful, "Peterson, my good fellow." The words die in your throat. The flicker of recognition in Peterson's eyes is extinguished as if a switch has been thrown. His face becomes a perfect, placid mask of polite indifference. His gaze slides off you, past you, through you, as if you are a pane of slightly dirty glass. He does not slow down. He does not speed up. He simply continues his conversation with the young lady, his path deviating by a mere 6 inches to ensure their shoulders will not accidentally brush against yours. He has looked at you, seen you, and then, with a terrifying finality, erased you from his field of vision. You are not there. You do not exist. The heat floods your face. Your friendly, half-formed greeting hangs in the air, a monument to your own foolishness. You stand frozen for a moment, your hand still halfway in its aborted wave. Did he not hear you? No, he was looking right at you. Could he have forgotten you? Unlikely. The snub was too deliberate, too precise. It was an action, not an omission. You feel hundreds of eyes on you, though when you risk a glance around, no one is paying you the slightest attention. The humiliation is entirely, privately yours. You stumble away, off the main path, and find a secluded bench behind a large rhododendron bush. Your grand tour of London society has lasted less than an hour, and you have already been comprehensively defeated. Why? What rule did you break? In a normal world, ignoring an acquaintance is simply rude. Here, it felt like a formal declaration, a weapon deployed with surgical precision. This, you are beginning to understand, is the core of the social code. It's not about who you know. It's about who you are seen to know. And, more importantly, who you are seen to not know. Historians will debate the function of this brutal etiquette for centuries. Was it a necessary defense mechanism for the upper classes? A way to navigate the new anonymity of the sprawling city and protect themselves from a tide of social climbers? Or was it merely an instrument of class-based cruelty? A way to constantly reinforce the invisible walls between us and them? As you sit on your lonely bench, the cheerful sounds of the park now feeling like a mockery. You don't feel like a threat. You just feel like a fool. You have learned your first and most important lesson in London. A friendly greeting, offered at the wrong time, to the wrong person, is a declaration of your own irrelevance. The shame from the park encounter clings to you like the damp London air. You retreat from the manicured lawns of Hyde Park and find your way back to the relative anonymity of your rented room. The city, which only this morning felt full of promise, now seems hostile and incomprehensible. What was Peterson's gain? Was it personal? Was it a momentary lapse? Your mind replays the scene endlessly. The brightness in his eyes, the slight, dismissive turn of his shoulder. It was an education in a subject you didn't know was on the curriculum. There is only one person who might be able to offer an explanation. You pull out the letter of introduction from your suitcase. It is addressed to a Mr. Alistair Davies, your father's third cousin, who works in an office in that part of London known simply as the City. You decide you cannot afford to wait. You need a guide, however reluctant. Navigating your way to his office is another journey into a different London. You leave the grand terraces and sprawling parks of the West End behind, heading east into the smoky, beating heart of commerce. Here, the streets are narrower, the buildings are darker, and the pace is frantic. Everyone is in a hurry. Men in sober, dark suits rush past, their faces etched with the anxieties of trade and finance. The air is thick with the smell of printing ink, shipping crates, and money. You find the address on a cramped street where the buildings lean together as if for support. Davy's Son, Importers is written in fading gold leaf on a dark green door. You step inside a dim, cluttered office. The air is filled with the scent of tea leaves, spices, and old paper. A young clerk with an ink smudge on his nose looks up at you suspiciously. You present your letter. He disappears into a back room, and after a moment, a man emerges. Mr. Davies is a man in his 50s, with a shrewd, tired face and waistcoat that is straining slightly at the buttons. He is not an aristocrat, but he radiates a kind of solid, no-nonsense prosperity. He takes the letter, reads it, and then gives you a long, appraising look, as if weighing your value like a chest of tea. Your father's boy, eh? He says, his voice a low rumble. Come to make your way in the world. Ambitious. Very well. He gestures to a hard wooden chair. Sit. There are no pleasantries. He asks a few brisk questions about your family, your education, your finances. You answer as best you can, feeling increasingly like a specimen under a microscope. Finally, unable to contain your anxiety, you blurt out the story of your encounter in the park, framing it as a moment of bewildering confusion. I'm quite certain he saw me, sir. You finish, lamely. Mr. Davies lets out a long, weary sigh. He leans back in his chair, which groans in protest. Oh, he says, as if diagnosing a common but unfortunate ailment. You, my boy, have been administered the cock direct. The phrase hangs in the air. The cut. Indeed, it is the most final, most unequivocal, and most brutal gesture in the entire lexicon of polite society. He explains, almost as if lecturing a student. It is the act of looking directly at an acquaintance and making it clear, through a deliberate vacancy of expression, that you do not see them. It is a declaration that, for one reason or another, the acquaintance is over, or in your case, that it must not be seen to exist in that particular company. He gestures vaguely with his hand. Peterson was with a lady, perhaps a fiancée, perhaps the daughter of a man he wishes to impress. To be seen acknowledging someone like you a nobody from his past. No offense intended would be a social misstep. He was not ignoring you. He was protecting himself. You stare at him, dumbfounded. It has a name. It's a recognized maneuver. So, it was intentional? My dear boy, it was as intentional as a signature on a contract. He warms to his subject, a connoisseur of misery, and the cut direct is only the crudest form. There are gradations. There is the cut indirect, where one feigns to be looking at a shop window, There is the cut infernal, where one stares at your forehead instead of your eyes. Some ladies have even mastered the cut celestial, where they suddenly find God in the middle of the pavement and become too wrapped in pious thought to notice you. It's a ridiculous and vicious science, but it governs our world. You think of the countless etiquette books for sale in the bookshops, guides to everything from how to enter a room to the proper way to eat an artichoke. You had assumed they were for refinement. You now see they are weapons manuals. Mr. Davies leans forward. Listen to me. Scholars and vicars can sit around debating whether all this nonsense is a vital bulwark against social chaos or just a nasty form of snobbery. For men like you and me, it's a matter of survival. You must learn the rules. You do not speak to someone unless you have been formally introduced. You do not acknowledge a superior in public unless they acknowledge you first. You must learn to see and, more importantly, learn to not see. Your eyes are not for looking. They are for navigating a minefield. He stands up, the audience clearly over. Take my advice. For the next 6 months, assume you are invisible. Observe, learn, and stay out of Hyde Park on a Sunday. You walk out of his office and back into the frantic London streets. The world feels different. The rules are not just unwritten. They are predatory. You came here seeking connection, but the first lesson you've been taught is the art of the disconnect. And you now have a name for the social guillotine that fell on you in the park. It is the cut, and you have a terrible, sinking feeling that it won't be the last time you feel its blade. Mr. Davies' words echo in your mind long after you leave his stuffy office. Assume you are invisible. Observe, learn, and stay out of Hyde Park on a Sunday. It is, of course, excellent advice, the kind of sensible, practical counsel your father would have approved of. And so, naturally, the very next Sunday, you find yourself walking towards Hyde Park. You tell yourself it's not an act of rebellion, it's field work. You are no longer a naive participant hoping for a friendly smile. You are a student of social warfare, returning to the scene of your first, crushing defeat to study the terrain. This time, you see the park not as a garden, but as a meticulously designed arena. The wide, sweeping paths are not for leisurely strolling. They are parade grounds. The benches are not for resting. They are spectator stands. The entire layout seems engineered to facilitate the complex dance of seeing and not minus seeing that you're just beginning to comprehend. You find an unobtrusive spot on the periphery, partially concealed by a large oak tree, and you watch. From this vantage point, the church parade transforms from a charming spectacle into a high stakes military drill. You see the rigid formations, the ladies walking in tight clusters, their voluminous skirts creating a moving fortress of fabric, the gentlemen escorting them, acting as sentries, their gazes constantly scanning the horizon for social friend and foe. This slow, regal procession along Rotten Row is the cavalry division, the riders using their height and their magnificent beasts to project an aura of unassailable status. They are literally above the fray. Armed with Mr. Davies' brutal vocabulary, you begin to see the cut being deployed everywhere. It's a performance worthy of a West End theatre, except the tickets are free and the emotional damage is permanent. You watch as a stout, red faced man in a slightly to loud tweed jacket attempts to greet the passing family. The patriarch of the family, a man with an impressive set of silver whiskers, meets the man's gaze for a fraction of a second, his eyes registering nothing, and then turns to his wife to make a comment about the weather. A perfect, clean, textbook cut direct. The wife, meanwhile, executes a flawless cut indirect, her head turning at the precise moment the man approached, her attention suddenly undoubtedly captivated by a particular duck on the Serpentine. Even the daughter, a young woman of perhaps 16, plays her part, her eyes lifting to the heavens in a passable imitation of the cut celestial. The man in the tweed jacket, his cheerful greeting wilting on his lips, is socially annihilated from 3 different angles simultaneously. It's a family-sized volley of snobbery. You begin to notice the props. Parasols are not for sun, they are portable shields, snapped open and angled to create a visual barrier at a moment's notice. A gentleman's riding crop is not for his horse. It is a tool to be minutely inspected just as a less minus desirable acquaintance comes into view. Even a newspaper can be a weapon, held up to create a wall of print that renders the reader deaf and blind to their immediate surrounding. There's a whole bizarre sub-minus field of etiquette, here the proper use of objects to facilitate ignoring people. You wonder if there are classes for this sort of thing, and you realize the sheer effort involved. No one here looks truly relaxed. Their gazes are constantly flickering, assessing, categorizing. They are on high alert, perpetually prepared to execute or receive a social snub. This is what brings the great academic debate into sharp focus for you. Is this exhausting ritual, as some social historians claim, a necessary mechanism for maintaining order in the new, sprawling metropolis, in a city where anyone could buy a good suit and pretend to be a gentleman? Perhaps these subtle, cruel signals were the only way for the elite to protect their fragile social circles from infiltration. Or is it, as others argue, simply a system of institutionalized bullying, a way for the powerful to constantly remind the less powerful of their place, a performance of status that requires a steady supply of victims to have any meaning? Watching the Reed-faced man retreat in disarray, his Sunday pleasure ruined, you find it hard to see him as a threat to social order. You spend 2 hours under your oak tree, a silent anthropologist cataloging the strange rites of this urban tribe. You learn that the parade has a rhythm, an ebb and a flow dictated by the time of day and the position of the sun. You learn that a nod from a certain person can elevate a man's status for a week, while a cut from that same person can ruin it. You came back to the park to understand the battlefield, and you have. You see now that the lush green lawns are a social killing field, and the polite smiles are the bare teeth of predators. Mr. Davies was right. This place is not for the faint of heart. And as you walk away, melting back into the anonymous crowd, you feel a new kind of fear. It's not the fear of being snubbed. It's the fear that one day you might have to learn how to do the snubbing yourself. Having thoroughly learned your lesson about the perils of pedestrian life, you decide to invest a small portion of your inheritance in the next best thing to invisibility, a rented horse and gig. A gig is a light, the minus-wheeled carriage, pulled by a single horse far from the grand, enclosed bruggermess of the aristocracy, but a significant step up from walking. It elevates you, both literally and socially, from the mud and drabble of the street. It is your first tentative purchase of social armor. Your first foray in the gig is a revelation. The city looks different from this modest perch. You are no longer navigating a forest of legs and elbows. You are part of the flow of traffic, a small boat in a vast, chaotic river of vehicles. The sheer variety is dizzying. There are enormous, slow-moving drays, laden with barrels of beer or stacks of timber, their drivers shouting and cracking their whips. There are nimble hansom cabs, the gondolas of London, their drivers perched high up at the back, weaving through traffic with terrifying speed. And then there are the private carriages, the true kings of the road. You steer your modest gig into the great procession in Hyde Park, feeling a new, if fragile, sense of belonging. You are no longer a pedestrian to be ignored. You are a fellow driver. But you quickly learn that this new world has its own, even more complex, set of unwritten rules. The etiquette of the carriage is a science unto itself. You notice it first in the way people look or don't look at each other. From the cushioned interior of her sealed carriage, a grand lady might stare out with an expression of sublime boredom, her gaze sweeping over the chaos of the street as if it were a rather dull landscape painting. Her eyes might pass over 100 faces, street sweepers, delivery boys, the occupants of lesser vehicles like your own, without a flicker of recognition. She is in a private, noble room, and the rest of the world is merely wallpaper. To catch her eye would be an unthinkable breach of protocol, like peering into her bedroom window. Then you see the acknowledgements, the subtle signals exchanged between equals. Two carriages of a similar high quality might draw alongside each other. The occupants don't wave or shout. Instead, there is a carefully calibrated exchange of nods. A gentleman might raise his hat a precise number of inches from his head, the height of the lift, denoting the level of respect or intimacy. A lady might incline her head, a movement so subtle it's barely perceptible, a slight dip of the chin that acknowledges the other person's existence without inviting any further interaction. It is a silent, elegant conversation conducted across the gap between two moving vehicles. Your own position in this hierarchy is ambiguous. You are in a carriage, which is good, but it is an open gig, exposing you to the elements and the gazes of others, and it is clearly a rental. You are occupying a strange social middle ground. You are above the pedestrians, but far below the occupants of the grand, lacquered carriages. Who are you supposed to look at? If you pass an acquaintance on the street, are you, from the lofty height of your gig, now the superior party, the one who dictates whether an acknowledgement is appropriate? What if you pass someone in a grander carriage than your own? Do you offer a respectful nod? Or is it presumptuous to assume they would even see you? This leads you to a rather weird and wonderful niche of Victorian publishing, the Equestrian Etiquette Manual. In a dusty bookshop, you find a little volume titled The Habits of Good Society, which contains an entire chapter on etiquette on wheels. It offers stern advice on matters you never thought to consider. A gentleman does not, by an inconsiderate splash, cover a lady's dress with mud. It warns. It advises on the proper way for a lady to enter and exit a carriage always facing forward, and the correct side for a gentleman to sit on when escorting her to her left, to leave his right arm free to defend her, presumably from rogue splashes. Historians will later debate how much of this was practical advice versus aspirational fantasy, but for the people of the time, these books were Bibles of behavior. The most fascinating rule you discover is about bows. The book dictates that a bow from a carriage should be less marked than a bow on the street. It is a slighter, more reserved gesture. Why? The book doesn't say, but you theorize that it's because your status is already amplified by your vehicle. Your carriage is doing most of the talking for you. Any gesture you make is merely a quiet punctuation mark. You practice a few of these slight, reserved nods in the privacy of your room, feeling utterly ridiculous. Yet, the next time you are out in your gig and you pass Mr. Davies, your gruff but informative cousin, you catch his eye. You give him the faintest, most subtle inclination of your head, the less marked bow of the man in a carriage. He sees you, and to your astonishment, he responds with an equally subtle lift of his chin. It is a tiny, fleeting moment of shared understanding, a successful transaction in the silent, baffling language of the London streets. You have not arrived, not by a long shot, but for the first time, you feel like you are at least moving in the right direction. The small victory of the reciprocal nod from Mr. Davies gives you a foolish, heady sense of progress. For a brief moment, you feel less like an interloper and more like a genuine inhabitant of this city. You have learned a word or two of the native language. Fueled by this newfound confidence, you decide it is time to take another, more daring step. You must formalize your existence. You must make a proper call. Your target, once again, is Mr. Davies. It seems only right to pay your respects at his residence, to show that you are more than just a business acquaintance of his distant relatives. This, you feel, is what a respectable young man would do. This requires a specific piece of equipment you do not yet possess a visiting card. You find a respectable stationer's shop on a smart-looking street. The inside is quiet and smells of expensive paper and sealing wax. The proprietor, a thin man who looks like he was born in a suit, shows you samples of cardstock with the gravity of a jeweler displaying diamonds. You learn that the card of a gentleman must be of the highest quality, but also of the utmost simplicity. No fancy fonts, no ornamentation, just your name, engraved in a plain, clear script. An address is permissible, but often omitted unless one wishes to encourage correspondence. The size, the thickness, the bevel of the edge, every detail is a subtle signifier of your taste and status. You choose a fine, heavy pasta board and, after some deliberation, settle on the simple, elegant script of Mr. Your name. You feel a ridiculous surge of pride when the man hands you the finished box a few days later. You now have a paper representation of yourself. You are, officially, ready to visit. Of course, a visit does not actually involve visiting. This is the first and most confusing rule you must learn. You are not expected to see Mr. Davies. You are certainly not expected to be invited in for tea. The purpose of the call is simply to be recorded. You present yourself at the imposing front door of Mr. Davies' house in a quiet, respectable square. It is a tall, narrow building of grey brick, its windows staring out like blank eyes. You take a deep breath, your heart thumping, and pull the polished brass handle for the bell. The door is opened, not by a friendly maid, but by a butler. He is a tall, mournful, minus-looking man who seems to have been carved from a single block of disapproval. He does not speak. He simply looks at you, one eyebrow slightly raised, and holds out a small, ornate silver tray. This is it, the moment of truth. You retrieve one of your pristine cards from its case. Your hand is trembling slightly as you place it on the tray. For Mr. Davies, you manage to say. The butler gives a nod so slight it could be an optical illusion, closes the door in your face, and you are left standing on the pavement. The entire transaction took less than 15 seconds. You spend the next 3 days in a state of quiet panic. What happens now? You have launched your tiny paper boat into the great, dark ocean of London society. Will it be accepted, or will it be sunk without a trace? The answer arrives on the 4th day, delivered by a boy on a bicycle. It is an envelope. Inside, on a silver tray of its own, is a single visiting card. It reads, Mr. Armistead Davy, you have done it. He has returned your call. This single piece of paper is your acceptance letter. It means you are now on his visiting list. It means you officially exist in his social world. That evening, feeling triumphant, you mention your success to Mr. Davies when you see him leaving his office. He looks at you with a familiar, weary expression. You are a lucky fool, my boy, he says, shaking his head. You got it right by accident. Did you know to turn down a corner of the card? You stare at him blankly. If you deliver the card in person, you turn down the top minus right corner. The top minus left is for congratulations. The bottom minus left for condolences. You presented a blank card. Hey, social neutral. It was your salvation. He then explains the horrifying alternative. If he had not wished to know you, he would have simply done nothing. The silence would have been your answer. But the true kiss of death, the social equivalent of being shot at dawn, would have been if his butler had returned your own card to you in an envelope. That means get up, and never come back. Never forget, Mr. Davies says as his parting shot, that a man's character can be judged by the state of the cards on the tray in his entrance hall. He is referring to the practice of displaying the cards of the most impressive visitors. That silver tray held by the butler wasn't just for collection. It was the first line of a resume. You didn't just pass a test. You passed an audition, and you had no idea you were even on stage. Your successful exchange of visiting cards with Mr. Davies proves to be the key that unlocks a very heavy, very intimidating door. A week later, a thick, cream-colored envelope arrives. It is not delivered by a common post boy. It is hand-delivered by a footman in livery. The card inside is stiff with importance. Its edge is gilded. It is an invitation. Mr. and Mrs. Alistair Davies request the pleasure of your company at a ball. The thrill is immediately followed by a wave of terror so profound it almost makes you nauseous. A ball. This is not the quiet, dusty archives or a brief, transcational encounter on a doorstep. This is the inner sanctum, the grand arena. This is the test you have been preparing for without even realizing it. The next few days are a blur of anxious preparation. You have your one good suit professionally cleaned and pressed. You spend an absurd amount of your savings on a new pair of dancing slippers, then minus soled leather things that feel ridiculously flimsy. But your greatest source of anxiety is your gloves. You learn, from a frantic perusal of an etiquette guide, that a gentleman's white kid gloves are a matter of life and death. They must be spotlessly, immaculately clean. To offer a lady a hand for a waltz with even a single smudge on your glove is a mortal insult. The guide contains a rather strange and specific piece of advice. A true gentleman carries a spare pair of gloves in his pocket, in case of any unforeseen soiling during the evening. A stained glove, a gossip columnist once wrote, was the sure sign of a debauchee. Though how one arrived at that conclusion is a mystery you don't have time to solve. You buy 2 pairs. The night of the ball arrives. You present yourself at the Davies residence, but this time the door opens not to a silent hallway, but to a river of humanity. The house is transformed. Gaslight from a dozen chandeliers glitters on jewels and slicked minus back hair. The air is hot and thick with the scent of perfume, wax, and champagne. A string orchestra is bravely playing a waltz from a cramped position on the staircase landing. You are swept inside by the current of guests. A tiny, nervous boat in a flood of silken broadcloth. You see Mrs. Davies at the top of the stairs, a formidable woman in a turban and a formidable amount of purple satin. You make your bow, murmur a thank you for the invitation, and she gives you a brief, professional smile that does not reach her eyes before her attention is already on the next guest. You have been processed. You are in. You find a spot near a potted fern and try to look like you belong there. The room is a kaleidoscope of social maneuvering. You see young ladies holding small, ornate cards, their dance cards. Gentlemen approach, bow, and formally request a specific dance, the third waltz. The second polka, which is then duly recorded with a tiny pencil. The dance card is the evening's sacred text, a binding social contract. To be a young lady with a full dance card is a triumph. To be one with empty spaces is a quiet tragedy played out in public. And then you see her. It's the Davies' daughter, a pleasant minus-looking girl you saw for a fleeting moment when you first dropped off your card. She is standing near the fireplace, and for a moment, she is not speaking to anyone. She looks a little bored. This is your chance. It's a terrifying prospect, but you know you must make an effort. You cannot spend the entire evening hiding behind a plant. You check your glove, still clean. You smooth down your jacket, taking a deep breath. You begin the long, perilous journey across the ballroom floor. You feel like a man walking a tightrope. You finally reach her. She looks up, a flicker of polite surprise in her eyes. You bow. Miss Davies, you say, your voice sounding strange and thin to your own ears. I was wondering if you might honor me with a dance. Perhaps the next waltz? Her smile freezes. The polite surprise in her eyes is replaced by a look of sheer panic. From behind you, the low, gravelly voice says, I believe, my boy, you are interrupting. You turn. It's Mr. Davies, and standing next to him is a very tall, very imposing, very old gentleman with a face like a grumpy eagle. You hadn't even seen him. He had been standing just to one side, silent, observing the room. You realize with a jolt of horror that Miss Davies was not alone. She was with this man, her designated chaperone or an important guest, and you just blundered into their space like a stray dog. You have committed one of the great ballroom sins. You have approached a lady directly without first being acknowledged by her or her chaperone. You have assumed a familiarity that does not exist. Lord Ashworth was just about to escort my daughter to get a glass of punch. Mr. Davies says, his voice dangerously calm. The eagle-faced man gives you a look of such withering contempt that you feel your soul shrivel. My apologies, my lord, sir, you stammer, bowing awkwardly to everyone in the general vicinity before retreating, your face burning with a heat that could power a steam engine. You have not just made a mistake. You have made a mistake in front of a law. You find your potted fern again, its leaves offering scant comfort. The music swells, the dances twirl, the laughter continues, but your night is over. You now understand the great debate among historians. Was the Victorian ball a charmingly romantic marriage market, or was it a brutal, high-stakes political theatre where fortunes were made and careers were ruined between the polka and the quadrille? There, hiding in the foliage, nursing your profound humiliation, know the answer. It is a battlefield lit by chandeliers, and you have just been spectacularly, decisively wounded. The shame of the ballroom incident is a fresh, open wound. You spend the rest of the evening plastered to the wall, trying to merge with the floral wallpaper, your pristine spare pair of gloves mocking you from your pocket. You watch the dancers, but you no longer see joy or romance. You see a series of complex, high-minus risk negotiations. Every smile is a calculation, every twirl a potential misstep. The entire event feels like a fever dream of social anxiety. You manage to slip away before the final dance, a ghost leaving a party he was never really at. In the days that follow, you live in dread of the consequences. You expect a cold letter from Mr. Davies, or perhaps the ultimate punishment, your own visiting card returned to you in an envelope, a crisp, formal excommunication. But nothing comes. The silence is, in its own way, just as unnerving. Your social education, however, continues. A few evenings later, seeking the distraction, you pay for a cheap ticket to the theatre. You are in the upper gallery. The gods, a noisy, crowded section with a fine view of the top of the actors' heads. But your attention is not on the stage. It is on the boxes below, the plush, private enclosures reserved for the wealthy and the powerful. And it's there that you become privy to another layer of this silent, brutal language. The ladies in the boxes are not just watching the play. They are performing in one of their own, and their most important prop is the fan. In their hands, the fan is not a tool for cooling oneself. It is a semaphore device, a shield, and a weapon. You watch, fascinated, as a lady in a particularly grand box uses her fan to communicate an entire chapter of social commentary without saying a word. When a notoriously boring politician enters the box opposite, she snaps her fan shut with a sharp, decisive click. The message is clear: this person is not worth my attention. Later, when a handsome young military officer with a dashing mustache takes his seat, she begins to fan herself with a slow, languid rhythm, her eyes peeking playfully over the top. It is a clear signal of interest, an invitation to be noticed. But the most devastating move is the one you see her use on a woman who is famous for her gossip. As the woman leans over to try and catch her eye, the lady in the box simply raises her fully opened fan, holding it steady like a screen, completely obscuring her own face. It is a cut direct delivered with a flick of the wrist, a public snub so elegant and so dismissive it takes your breath away. It's during the interval that you overhear the conversation that confirms your worst fears. Two women are standing near you in the crowded corridor, fanning themselves and dissecting the attendees with the skill of surgeons. And then you hear it. Did you hear about the Davies ball? One of them says, her voice a gleeful whisper. Apparently some provincial nobody, some cousin from the mud, tried to accost poor Eleanor Davies right in front of Lord Ashworth. Can you imagine the sheer, unmitigated horror? The other woman lets out a squeak of horrified delight. No, how deliciously awful. The poor girl must have been mortified. They don't know who you are. They don't know you are standing right there. To them, you are just part of the anonymous crush in the cheap seats. But their words are like tiny, sharp needles pricking your skin. You are no longer just a failure. You are an anecdote, a piece of amusing gossip being passed around the drawing rooms of London. Your clumsy attempt at a dance has become a story, a cautionary tale about the buffoon from the countryside. You stumble out of the theatre, not even waiting for the final act. The humiliation is no longer a private affair. It has gone public. You think about the bizarre, almost coded language of fans you just witnessed. Historians have long debated the reality of these so-called fan languages, with some arguing that the complex codes published in magazines touching the right cheek meant yes. The left cheek meant no, were mostly a playful fiction, a marketing gimmick by fan makers. Others insist that a simplified, informal version was very much in use. Watching the lady in the box, you are convinced the fan was a tool of communication, used for flirting, for signaling boredom, and most devastatingly, for snubbing. The realization that you are the subject of gossip is a new and terrible form of punishment. The cut, the botched introduction, those were direct assaults. This is different. This is a slow poisoning of your reputation, happening in whispers in rooms you will never enter. You came to London to make a name for yourself. You have succeeded. In the worst possible way, you are now that provincial nobody. The thought makes you want to crawl into a hole and never come out. Your bed, in your lonely rented room, feels less like a place of rest and more like a place to hide. The knowledge that you have become a piece of city-wide gossip is paralyzing. For a week, you barely leave your rooms. The thought of stepping outside, of potentially encountering someone who might have heard the story, is too much to bear. Your ambition, which had flickered back to life, is now all but extinguished. London has defeated you. You are ready to pack your bags and retreat to the quiet, predictable obscurity of the countryside. It is Mr. Davies, surprisingly, who pulls you back from the brink. He appears at your lodging house unannounced one evening, a stark breach of his own rigid etiquette. It's a signal of the seriousness of the situation. He finds you sitting in your gloomy room, staring at the wall. So he says, without preamble, standing in the doorway, "You have made a mess of things." You just nod, unable to speak. The gossip will die down. He continues, his voice gruff but not entirely unkind. London has the attention span out. By next week, they will be dissecting some other poor fool's misfortune. The question is, what will you do now? Run home with your tail between your legs? He doesn't wait for an answer. You made one fundamental error. Boy, the root of all your troubles. You assumed you could simply talk to people. You cannot. He steps into the room. In this city, you do not exist to someone until you have been formally presented to them. An introduction is not a suggestion. It is a creation. It is the act that brings you into being in another person's social universe. Without it, you are a ghost. And ghosts, as you have learned, get ignored. This is the rule you have been circling, the one that underpins all the others. The cut, the visiting cards, the ballroom etiquette, they are all built on this foundation. An introduction is a transfer of social capital. When a person of standing introduces you to another, they are essentially vouching for you. They are putting their own reputation on the line, however slightly, to say, this person is acceptable. You may see him now. To bypass this, to introduce yourself, is to claim an equality you have not earned. It is the ultimate social sin. You wanted to dance with my daughter? Mr. Davy says, a hint of a wry smile on his lips. You should have found me first. You would have bowed, and I would have said, my lord, may I present Mr. your name, my young cousin from the country? And Lord Ashworth, being a gentleman, would have given you a stiff nod. And then, and only then, would you have existed for him, and through him, for my daughter. The path to a simple waltz is long and paved with introductions. He is giving you a masterclass in the mechanics of society. He is showing you the invisible architecture that holds this whole absurd world together. The absolute necessity of the formal introduction is a concept historians will analyze for its role in consolidating class power. Was it a way to ensure that the social circle of the elite remained a closed loop, accessible only to those with pre-minus existing connections? Or was it, as some contemporaries argued, a way of ensuring social harmony, preventing the awkwardness and potential conflict of unsolicited interactions? You, the ghost who tried to talk, can see the logic in both arguments. The rule is both a fortress and a cage. But what do I do now? You ask, your voice a crow. No one will introduce me to anyone. Nonsense, he snorts. I will. I have a duty to your father. And besides, your utter incompetence has become a small stain on my own reputation. I have a vested interest in making you appear less of a buffoon. He looks around your small, sad room. There is a gathering at the Royal Academy next week, an exhibition of new paintings. It is a respectable, intellectual affair, less dancing, more thoughtful stroking of beards. You will accompany me. You will be my shadow. You will speak to no one unless I perform the magic words. Is that clear? It is. A tiny, fragile sliver of hope returns. You are being given a second chance. A chance to be properly created. You think about a strange, and probably apocryphal, story you read about the famous dandy, Though Brummel, from a generation earlier. The story goes that Brummel was once asked who a certain portly gentleman was. He peered at the man through his quizzing glass and replied, Which of the two, Bramall, with a single, cutting phrase, was able to make a man so insignificant that he appeared as a duo? It was the ultimate power of introduction in reverse, the power to un-create someone. And for God's sake, get a better waistcoat, Mr. Davies says. Already turning to leave, that one screams country mouse. The door closes, and you are left alone again. But this time, the silence is not one of despair. It is the silence of preparation. You are going back into the battlefield. But this time, you have a general. The night of the Royal Academy exhibition arrives. You are nervous red, but a well-dressed one. Following Mr. Davies's blunt advice, you have invested in a new waistcoat sober. Dark silk brocade that you hope whispers quiet sophistication rather than screaming provincial desperation. You meet Mr. Davies at the entrance to Burlington House. He gives your new attire a single, brief nod, which you have come to understand is the highest form of praise he is capable of. The exhibition halls are crowded, but it's a different kind of crowd from the ball. The atmosphere is more subdued, more intellectual. People are gathered in small clusters, speaking in hushed, serious tones as they contemplate enormous canvases depicting historical battles, dramatic landscapes, and portraits of stern minus-faced aristocrats. This is the art world, but it is also the social world, and the rules of engagement are just as rigid. Now, Mr. Davies says, his voice a low command, you are my shadow. You stay by my side. You look at the paintings. You do not, under any circumstances, initiate a conversation. If I introduce you to someone, you will offer a firm handshake, not a dead fish. Not a bone-crusher. Make eye contact for precisely 2 seconds, and say, a pleasure to make your acquaintance. Nothing more. Let them lead the conversation. Your job is to be pleasant, unobtrusive, and forgettable. Understood? You nod, your throat too dry to speak. Your job is to be forgettable. It's a strange ambition. You follow him into the main gallery. For the first hour, you are a perfect shadow. You stare intently at paintings, trying to look thoughtful. You listen as Mr. Davies exchanges pleasantries with other gentlemen. You are invisible, and it is a profound relief. And then you start to notice the intricate dance of the eyes. No one just looks at anyone. Gazes are directed, controlled, and freighted with meaning. You watch as 2 men, clearly rivals, catch each other's eye across the room. They hold the gaze for a beat too long, a silent challenge, before both turning away at the exact same moment. It's a duel fought with optic nerves. You see a lady subtly angle her body so that she can observe a potential suitor for her daughter without ever appearing to look at him directly, using the reflection in the glass of a painting as a makeshift mirror. The most important lesson you learn is the art of the social scan. A person entering a room does not simply look around. They perform a slow, sweeping scan of the occupants, their eyes briefly touching upon each group, acknowledging the important, dismissing the irrelevant, and identifying targets for conversation. It is a rapid, complex process of social calculus. To be caught staring, to let your gaze linger on someone you have not been introduced to, is a major faux pas. It is visual trespassing. Your eyes, you realize, are not your own. They are social instruments, to be deployed with caution and precision. Mr. Davies finally stops in front of a large, dramatic painting of a shipwreck. He begins a conversation with a thin, scholarly-looking gentleman who is peering at the canvas through a pair of spectacles. After a few minutes of talk about brushwork and composition, Mr. Davies turns to you. Professor, he says to the man, may I present my young cousin? As to your name, he has recently come down to London from the country. The magic words, may I present? The professor turns to you. His eyes meet yours. This is the moment. You execute your instructions perfectly. Firm handshake, 2 seconds of eye contact. A pleasure to make your acquaintance. You say, your voice steady. It works. The professor sees you. You have been created. He asks you a polite, formulaic question about which part of the country you are from. You give a brief, respectable answer, and that's it. The conversation flows away from you, back to the painting. But you have done it. You have successfully navigated your first formal introduction. You feel a disproportionate sense of triumph. You remember reading a strange little story about the portrait painter, Sir Thomas Lawrence. He claimed that he could judge a person's entire character by the way they held their eyes during a sitting. A shifty gaze indicated a weak will, a steady one, a firm constitution. It seemed like artistic hyperbole at the time, but now you believe it. In this world, control of your own gaze is paramount. It is a measure of yourself minus discipline, your social awareness, your very character. Later, Mr. Davies introduces you to two more people. A bluff, hearty merchant and his quiet, watchful wife. Each time, you perform your small, rehearsed part, handshake, eye contact, pleasantry. You are becoming a passable social automaton. By the end of the evening, you have been successfully created in the minds of three new people. You haven't had a single memorable conversation. You have learned nothing of substance about art or commerce, but you have not committed any blunders. You have been entirely, blessedly forgettable. As you walk home through the gaslit streets, Mr. Davies claps you on the shoulder. Well done, boy, he says. You have learned to be quiet. It is the first step towards learning to speak. You understand now that this society is built on a paradox. To be seen, you must first master the art of being invisible. To be heard, you must first learn the power of silence. And to connect with anyone, you must first learn the intricate, baffling, and absolutely essential etiquette of the glance. Your evening as a successful, forgettable shadow at the Royal Academy marks a turning point. You are no longer terrified of failure. You are now terrified of your own ignorance. Relying on Mr. Davies as your permanent guide is not a sustainable strategy. You cannot spend your life as someone else's shadow. To survive, you must learn to navigate this world on your own. You must acquire the instruction manual. And so, you begin to haunt the bookshops of London, not in search of poetry or novels, but of something far more practical knowledge as a form of self-minus defense. You find your way to the section dedicated to etiquette. It is a booming genre, in a society with a rapidly growing middle class, all flush with new money and desperate to climb the social ladder. These books are the keys to the kingdom. They are roadmaps to respectability, promising to teach the aspiring merchant or the provincial clerk how to act like a gentleman. You purchase a small stack of them, titles like The Habits of Good Society, Manners for Men, and The Lady's Guide to Perfect Deportment. Back in the privacy of your room, you light a lamp and open the first one. What you find inside is a universe of rules so detailed, so specific, and so utterly bizarre that it makes your head spin. You thought you had learned the basics, but you have barely scratched the surface. You learn, for instance, that the simple act of walking down the street is a minefield. A gentleman must always give a lady the inside of the pavement, the position closest to the wall. Why? To shield her from the mud and filth that might be splashed up by passing carriages. A logical, if slightly depressing, explanation, but the rules quickly spiral into madness. It is considered vulgar to turn and look at a pretty woman after she has passed. It is improper to smoke a cigar on a public thoroughfare before dinner. It is absolutely forbidden to carry a parcel, no matter how small. A gentleman simply does not carry things. That is what servants are for. Then you get to the chapter on conversation. You are instructed to avoid any topic that might lead to heated debate, politics and religion or out. You must never ask a direct question about a person's health or wealth, though you may make a general, cheerful comment like, "I trust you are keeping well." You learn about the great Victorian euphemisms. You do not mention a woman's legs. You refer to them as limbs. In some circles, even the word trousers is considered too shocking. One might refer to them as unmentionables. The rules for dining are a special category of horror. You discover that a formal dinner table is laid out with a terrifying arsenal of silverware, and you are expected to know the precise function of each piece. There is a fish for, a salad for, a meat for, a dessert for. There are special tongs for eating asparagus, and, in one particularly mind-boggling passage, you read about the existence of grape scissors. for snipping off a small portion of a great bunch without touching it with your hands. You would need an engineering degree just to eat a fruit plate. The books confirm the rules you've already painfully learned, but with even more maddening detail. Gloves, you read, are not just about cleanliness. The number of buttons on your glove 1, 2, or 3 signifies the level of formality of the occasion, and your initial analysis of the cut was correct. One manual, in a chapter delicately titled On the Withdrawal of an Acquaintance, advises that if one must perform such an unpleasant duty, it should be done decisively, but without overt aggression, so as to cause no public scene. It is a beautifully polite instruction on how to psychologically brutalize someone. This is when you stumble upon another, even more obscure form of silent communication, the language of the postage stamp. A popular ladies' magazine you pick up includes a playful, but telling, short, placing a stamp upside minus down on a letter. It claims, means I love you. Placed sideways, it signals my heart is another's. It's a secret, coded language for a world where direct emotional expression is all but forbidden. As you sit surrounded by these books, a profound question dawns on you, one that historians will continue to puzzle over for generations. Are these books descriptive or prescriptive? Are they an accurate reflection of how people actually behaved? A society genuinely this obsessed with a button minus count on their gloves? Or are they selling an impossible ideal? A set of aspirational rules that most people ignored, creating a standard that no one could possibly live up to and thus ensuring everyone felt a little bit insecure, a little bit of a failure. The thought that this might all be a huge, elaborate sham is both comforting and deeply frustrating. You close the last book, your mind buzzing with 1,000 new ways to fail. You are no longer ignorant, but the knowledge has not brought you freedom. It has brought you claustrophobia. You now see the invisible cage that surrounds everyone in this city. Every gesture, every word, every glance is regulated. You wanted to learn the rules of the game. You have succeeded, but you are beginning to suspect that the only way to win is to not play at all. And that, is not an option. Armed with your new, encyclopedic knowledge of social regulations, you feel a little less like a blind man in a minefield and more like a soldier who has been handed a map of the mine. The terror is still there, but it is now mixed with a grim, intellectual curiosity. You begin to venture out more, not to participate, but to observe, using your etiquette books as a field guide to the strange rituals of the London elite. You are a student of the snub, an apprentice of apathy. And then, one crisp autumn afternoon, it happens. You are the one who is cut. You are walking down Piccadilly, feeling rather pleased with yourself. Your new waistcoat is on. Your hat is at a respectable angle. You are giving every lady the inside of the pavement. You are, for all intents and purposes, a passable imitation of a gentleman. You see a man approaching from the other direction. It is Lord Ashworth, the eagle-minus-faced aristocrat from the disastrous ball, the man whose contempt nearly turned you to stone. Your first instinct is to flee, to dive into the nearest shop or hail a cab to the other side of the planet. But it's too late. He has seen you. You see the faint, cold flicker of recognition in his eyes. This is a critical moment. According to the rules, as the vastly inferior party, you must not acknowledge him unless he acknowledges you first. Your job is to look straight ahead, to pretend you haven't seen him, to become, in effect, a part of the scenery. You try your best. You fix your gaze on a distant point somewhere over his left shoulder. You focus on your breathing. You can do this. You are a rook. You are a lamppost. You are an invisible man. But Lord Ashworth has other plans. He is a master of this game, and you are a novice. He doesn't just ignore you. He performs the most magnificent, most theatrical, most brutally public cut direct you have ever witnessed. As he draws level with you, he doesn't just look past you. He stops. He pulls a small, silver quizzing glass from his waistcoat pocket, raises it to his eye, and proceeds to inspect a smudge on a shop window directly behind your head. He holds the pose for a full 5 seconds, his entire posture radiating a kind of profound, intellectual curiosity about this fascinating smudge. The street, with its dozens of pedestrians, becomes his stage. He is not just ignoring you. He is using you as a backdrop for a one-act play about how little you matter. The message is broadcast to everyone on the pavement. This person, the gesture screams, is so utterly insignificant that a random piece of dirt is more worthy of my aristocratic attention. The heat rises in your cheeks. It's 1,000 times worse than the incident in the park with Peterson. That was a quiet, defensive maneuver. This is a public execution. You force yourself to keep walking, your legs stiff, your gait unnatural. You can feel the eyes of the other pedestrians on you, some with pity, some with amusement. You have been publicly branded. The great Lord Ashworth has, for his own entertainment, pointed you out to the world as a person who is not to be seen. You retreat to a small, quiet part, your mind reels. You have been a victim of the very art form you were studying, and you realize, with a sudden, chilling clarity, the true purpose of the cut. It's not just about protection or exclusion. It's about power. It's a performance. Lord Ashworth didn't cut you because you were a threat. He cut you because he could. It was a casual, almost thoughtless demonstration of his own social dominance. Like a lion thwarting at a fly, not out of anger, but simply to remind the fly that it is a fly. This experience brings another historical debate into sharp, painful focus for you. Some historians argue that this rigid, hierarchical etiquette was a source of social stability by making everyone intensely aware of their place. It reduced friction and prevented the chaos that might result from a more fluid, uncertain social structure. Everyone knew the rules, and as long as they followed them, the machine hummed along. But other historians, of a more radical bent, argue the exact opposite. They claim that this system, built on a foundation of constant, low-grade psychological warfare, was inherently unstable. It bred resentment, encouraged hypocrisy, and created a society simmering with unspoken frustrations. It was not a stable pyramid, it was a pressure cooker. As you sit on the bench, the phantom sensation of Lord Ashworth's quizzing glass still burning a hole in your soul. You feel a surge of something new. It's not just shame, it's anger, a quiet, cold, and deeply motivating anger. You have been the victim, the punchline, the provincial fool for long enough. The shame is burning away, and in its place, something harder is being forged. You have been pushed, prodded, and publicly humiliated, and you are tired of it. You are no longer content to just know the rules. You are beginning to think that maybe, just maybe, it's time you learned how to use them. The public execution by quizzing glass is a transformative experience. The shame still stings. But as Mr. Davies predicted, London's memory is short. No one points at you in the street. The world moves on, but you do not. The incident has hardened you, crystallized your resolve. The desire to simply fit in has been replaced by a much colder, more pragmatic ambition, the desire to master the system. You are no longer just trying to avoid the mines. You are learning how to lay them. This shift in your perspective changes how you see the world. You are no longer just an observer of etiquette. You are a student of power. You start to analyze the behavior of the people around you not just for its social correctness, but for its strategic intent. You realize that every interaction, no matter how trivial, is a negotiation of status. This brings you back to the great debate that seems to lurk under every cobblestone of this city. A debate that scholars will continue to thrash out for centuries. What is the true nature of this complex social machine? Is it, as the conservatives of your era claim, a natural and necessary order, a hierarchy based on breeding, education, and moral character, designed to keep society from collapsing into a chaotic, vulgar mob? They would argue that these strict rules, this great chain of being, provide stability. They allow everyone to know their place, and thus, to perform their duties with maximum efficiency and minimum friction. The cut, in this view, is a regrettable but necessary surgical tool for removing social infections. Or is it, as a new generation of radical thinkers is beginning to suggest, an entirely artificial construct? A system of oppression designed by the powerful to protect their own interests and to systematically exploit the less powerful. In this view, good breeding is just another term for inherited wealth, and etiquette is the velvet glove on the iron fist of class warfare. The rules are not there to create stability. They are there to prevent mobility. They are a fortress designed to keep people like you out. You see evidence for both arguments everywhere. When you see a gentleman give up his seat in a crowded omnibus to a working minus-class woman laden with parcels, you see a flicker of the paternalist, noblesse oblige ideal. He is upholding his duty as a superior, showing kindness to an inferior, and in doing so, reinforcing the idea that the hierarchy is a benevolent one. But when you see that same gentleman, 5 minutes later, deliver a devastating cataract to a merchant whose suit is just a little too new, you see the other side. You see the system's cruelty, its use of etiquette as a weapon to police the borders of the elite. This intellectual journey provides a strange sort of comfort. By reframing your own humiliating experiences as data points in a larger historical argument, you rob them of some of their personal sting. You are not just a victim, you are a researcher. Your shame is no longer just shame, it is evidence. You also begin to notice the economic dimension of it all. You read a fascinating and slightly strained article in a journal about the political economy of the Bell. The author argues, in dense, academic prose, that the time and energy spent learning and performing these rituals is a form of non-minus productive labor. It is a massive, society-minus-wide expenditure of human capital on something that creates no tangible value. It is, the author claims, a form of conspicuous consumption, not of goods, but of time. To be able to afford to spend your days mastering the art of the visiting card is the ultimate status symbol, because it proves you don't have to do any real work. This idea resonates with you deeply. You think of the hours you spent reading etiquette manuals, the money you've spent on waistcoats and gloves, the mental energy you've expended on learning how not to look at people. It is all a tax, a tribute you have to pay to the system just for the privilege of existing within it. Your anger cools and settles into a kind of grim determination. You cannot dismantle this system. You are a single, insignificant person, but you don't have to be its victim. If etiquette's a weapon, then you will learn to wield it. If society is a fortress, you will learn how to pick the locks. You stop thinking about what is fair or what is just. Those are luxuries you cannot afford. You start to think, instead, about what is effective. Your moral education is over. Your strategic education has just begun. Your new quest for knowledge takes you out of the drawing rooms and exhibition halls and into a different kind of social theatre, the luxury shop. You make your way to Bond Street, a canyon of quiet, imposing storefronts. This is not a place of boisterous commerce. There are no vendors shouting their wares. The windows display only a few perfect items: a single pearl necklace on a velvet bust, a pair of gleaming riding boots, a leather minus-bound book. The message is clear: this is a place of quality, not quantity. If you seek bargains, you are in the wrong part of the planet. You choose a shop at random, one with a discreet, gilded sign that reads "An elegant smile," purveyors of fine leather goods and stationery. You push open the heavy glass door, which announces your arrival with a soft, melodic chime. The air inside is still and cool, and smells of money. It's the clean, crisp scent of new paper, the rich, earthy aroma of tanned leather, and the faint, metallic tang of polished brass fixtures. The shop is silent, with the hushed reverence a library or a church. A thick carpet muffles your footsteps. Behind a long, polished mahogany counter stands a single shop assistant. He is a work of art in himself, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, his hair slicked down. He stands as still as a statue. He is the high priest of polite commerce, and this is his temple. He sees you enter, and his eyes register your presence. He gives you a nod so faint it is more of a muscular twitch, an acknowledgement that you are an object that has entered his field of vision. It is not a welcome, it is a classification. He has already assessed your suit, your posture, your net worth. and filed you away in the appropriate mental cabinet. For now, it is the cabinet marked browser, potential waste of time. He makes no move to approach you. You pretend to inspect it, display of silvering quills, but your attention is entirely on him. And now, you witness the master at work. The little bell chimes again, and a lady sweeps in. She is in her 50s, radiating an aura of effortless, all minus money authority. The shop assistant doesn't walk towards her. He glides. He seems to materialize at her side without making a sound. "Good afternoon, your ladyship," he murmurs, his bow perfectly calibrated deep enough to show profound respect, but not so deep as to be fawning. "Good afternoon, Sterling," she says, her voice bold. "I require a new travel diary. Something durable." "Of course, your ladyship." He produces 3 diaries from a locked cabinet, one bound in Moroccan leather, one in dark green calfin, one in an exotic minus-looking snake's head. He lays them on a velvet cloth on the counter. The lady inspects them, tapping one with a gloved finger. "This one," she says, indicating the calfskin. "Send it to the house." She does not ask the price. The price is not mentioned. It is understood that for a person of her standing, the cost is an irrelevance, a vulgar detail to be handled by accountants later. The entire transaction is a smooth, silent ballet of shared assumptions. She turns and sweeps out. A few minutes later, the bell chimes again. A different woman enters. She is also wealthy. Her dress is made of expensive silk. Her jewelry is plentiful and glitters aggressively. But she is different. There is a loudness to her, a slight uncertainty in her posture. She is new money. The shop assistant, Sterling, remains behind the counter. He waits for her to approach him. The delay is only 5 seconds, but in the silence of this shop, it feels like an eternity. It is a subtle, powerful message. "You will come to me. I wish to see a lady's writing case," she says, her voice a little too loud for the room. "Certainly, madame," Sterling says. He turns and retrieves a writing case from a shelf. It is a fine case, made of good leather, but you notice it is not from the same locked cabinet as the diaries. He is showing her the second minus best. "Don't you have anything fancier?" the woman asks, a hint of frustration in her voice, perhaps with more silver inlay. "I'm afraid, madame," Sterling says, with an expression of profound, regretful sympathy, "that our more intricate pieces are currently with the engraver. A terrible shame. You know, with absolute certainty, that this is a lie. He is performing a commercial cut. He is not being rude. His tone is impeccably polite, but he is using that politeness to deny her access, to subtly inform her that she is not the right kind of customer for the fancier things. He is protecting the exclusivity of his brand, acting as a gatekeeper for the aristocracy he serves. And here you see the commercial application of the great historical debate. Was this shop assistant just a canny businessman, protecting his high-end clientele from the perceived vulgarity of the nouveau rich? Or was he an active agent in the class war, enforcing the invisible boundaries and making the wrong sort of people feel unwelcome, thus shoring up the very social structure his business depended on? The woman, sensing her defeat but not quite understanding how it was accomplished, eventually buys the less minus fancy case and leaves in a rustle of frustrated silk. Sterling watches her go, his face a perfect blank. You have just witnessed a masterclass in social gatekeeping. You leave the shop, the melodic chime of the doorknow sounding like a tolling bell. You understand now that the rules of etiquette are not just enforced by the elite themselves. They are enforced by a whole army of loyal, silent deputies, the butlers, the footmen, and the impeccably polite shop assistants who know, without ever being told, who belongs and who does not. The weeks after your public shaming by Lord Ashworth are a period of quiet, intense study. You have graduated from being a victim of the system to being a student of its mechanics. Now, you feel a grim sense of readiness for the next stage, becoming a practitioner. You know, with a cold certainty, that you cannot truly be safe in this world until you have proven you are capable of wielding its weapons yourself. An opportunity must arise. A moment where you are forced to choose between being the cutter or the cut. The moment arrives, as it often does, in an unexpected place. You are not on the grand stage of Hyde Park or in a glittering ballroom. You are on the grimy, crowded platform of a railway station. Mr. Davies has sent you on an errand to his shipping agent in the Docklands, and you are returning to the city. The air is thick with the sulphurous smell of coal smoke and the press of bodies is immense. And then, through the crowd, you see him. It's a man named Thomas Mills. He's the son of a tenant farmer on the estate neighboring your family's home in the country. You grew up together, in a loose, boyish way. You fished in the same streams, climbed the same trees. You are not of the same class, not by a long shot. But, in the freedom of the countryside, those lines were blurred. He is a good man, honest and hard-working, but he is undeniably, visibly, from a different world. He is wearing rough, country-minus spun clothes. His face is weathered from the sun, and he is carrying a large, lumpy sack tied with twine. He is the walking embodiment of the life you have tried so hard to leave behind. He sees you at the same moment. His face breaks into a wide, genuine, delighted grin. The pure, uncomplicated joy on his face is a painful reminder of a simpler world. He raises a hand and takes a step towards you, his mouth opening to call out your name. This is it, the test. All the rules, all the observations, all the painful lessons of the past few months collide in your mind. To acknowledge him here, in the heart of London, would be social suicide. You are standing not far from a group of well-mannered, dressed city gentlemen, the kind of men you are trying to become. To be seen in a friendly exchange with this rough-looking countryman would be to instantly erase all the progress you have made. It would brand you, indelibly, as one of them. Your new waistcoat, your carefully cultivated accent, your mastery of the subtle nod, all would be rendered meaningless. Your mind races. You could perform the cut indirect, suddenly developing a deep and pressing interest in the railway timetable on the wall. You could try the cut celestial, looking to the heavens as if in search of divine guidance. But you know, with a terrible, sinking fear, that neither will work. His approach is too direct, his grin too wide. A subtle snub will not suffice. The situation calls for the nuclear option, the cut direct. You look at Thomas Mills, your childhood companion. You look him directly in the eye, and you empty your face of all expression. You summon the blank, placid mask of polite indifference that you have seen deployed so many times against you. You let your gaze slide off his face, through him, and fixate on a point on the far platform. You turn your body slightly, a quarter mile astern, presenting him with the cold wall at your shoulder. You do not know him. You have never seen him before in your life. He is a stranger. The grin on his face falters, then collapses. It is replaced by a look of pure, gut-wrenching bewilderment. He stops in his tracks. His mouth closes. He looks at you for a moment longer, his honest country eyes filled with a pain that you feel like a physical blow. Then he turns, hoists his lumpy sack onto his shoulder, and disappears into the crowd, swallowed up by the city. You stand perfectly still, your heart hammering in your chest. You have done it. You have performed your first successful cut. You have protected yourself. You have proven that you understand the rules, and you have never, in your entire life, felt more disgusting. The elation you expected is entirely absent. There is no sense of victory, only a hollow, metallic taste in your mouth. You have sacrificed a piece of your own history, of your own humanity, on the altar of social ambition. You see now the terrible, personal cost of this game. The historians and their debates about social stability and class warfare are no longer abstract theories. You have just become a data point. You are the oppressor. You are the agent of the system. A profound and rather strange philosophical question comes to mind. Some writers of your time are beginning to explore the idea of a fragmented self, the idea that a person is not a single, unified identity, but a collection of different selves that they present in different situations. Was the person who just cut Thomas Mills the real you? Or was that a different person, a London you, a social construct you have created in order to survive. The thought is both a comfort and a curse. It allows you to distance yourself from your own actions, but it also suggests that you are becoming a stranger to yourself. The train to the city arrives with a great hiss of steam. You find a seat. As the train rattles through the bleak industrial suburbs, you stare at your own reflection in the grimy window. The face that looks back at you is the same face you arrived with, but you know, with absolute certainty, that the person behind it has changed forever. The ghost of Thomas Mill's bewildered face haunts you for days. You try to justify your actions as a necessary evil, a strategic sacrifice, but the hollow feeling in your gut remains. You have proven you can be cruel, which, in this society, is a prerequisite for success. The knowledge brings you no comfort. It feels like a sickness of the soul. Seeking a different kind of solace, you find yourself, one Sunday morning, standing outside a large, imposing church in a fashionable square. You are not a particularly devout man, but you are drawn to the promise of stillness, of a place where the frantic, competitive rules of society are supposed to be suspended. You imagine a quiet hour of contemplation, a moment of democratic worship where all are equal in the eyes of God. You are, once again, adorably naive. You step through the heavy oak doors into the hushed, cavernous interior. The air smells of old stone, beeswax, and damp in books. A faint, colored light filters through the stained minus glass windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. But there is no democratic mingling here. The church is as rigidly stratified as any ballroom. A stern minus-faced verger in a black robe approaches you. He does not ask your name. He simply looks you up and down, performs a swift, silent calculation of your social standing based on the cut of your suit, and then gestures with his chin towards a set of pews in the back, near the draughty entrance. You have been seated, socially, then now, spiritually. From your place in the cheap seat, you have a perfect view of the church's social geography. The pews at the front, the ones closest to the pulpit and the altar, are clearly the most desirable. They are enclosed by ornate, carved wooden doors, creating little private boxes within the larger space. These are the box pews, rented annually by the wealthiest families of the parish. They are often furnished with their own cushions, footstools, and even, in some cases, a small, charcoal minus burning fireplace to ward off the winter chill. It is a private drawing room in the house of God. You see Lord Ashworth and his family entering their box pew, the verger bowing deeply as he ushers them in. The social hierarchy radiates outwards from there. The pews in the center, the good pews, are occupied by the solid, respectable merchant class, people like the Davies family. Then there are the less desirable pews at the sides, with poor views of the preacher. And finally, there is your section at the back, reserved for newcomers, clerks, and the generally insignificant. In some churches, you've read, there's even a separate, cramped gallery for the servants. Even the act of worship is governed by unspoken rules. You watch as the congregation rises to sing a hymn. Everyone has a hymn book, but the people in the box pews barely seem to consult theirs. They know the words by heart. They sing with a kind of bored, effortless piety. In the middle pews, people sing with a bit more vigor, their voices earnest and strong. In your section at the back, there is a lot of uncertain mumbling and frantic page minus turning. Your piety, it seems, is also judged by your performance. The sermon begins. The preacher, a man with a booming voice, talks of humility, of charity, of the meek inheriting the earth, and as he speaks, you witness a silent, vicious drama unfold in the pew in front of you. A family, a man, a woman, and their two daughters are trying to find a space. The pew is occupied by a single, formidable minus-looking dowager who has spread her voluminous skirts out, taking up the space of three people. The father of the family gives a small, apologetic cough. The dowager, without turning her head, simply expands her skirts by another inch. It is the cot direct, performed with crinoline. It is a territorial battle fought during a sermon on Christian love. The family is forced to retreat and find seats elsewhere. Historians will later debate the role of the church in the Victorian social structure. Was it a genuine moral anchor, a force for social cohesion that tempered the brutal excesses of the secular world? Or was it merely another institution co-opted by the elite, a place where social hierarchy was not just replicated, but given a divine seal of approval? Looking at the carved wooden door of Lord Ashworth's private, heated box pew, you have a pretty good idea of where you stand on the issue. The most bizarre and telling detail you learn is about the collection plate. A contemporary essay you read claimed that some wealthy parishioners considered the clatter of coins in the plate to be vulgar. To solve this, they would place a single, high-value banknote on the plate, but only after wrapping it around their finger so that it looked like a much smaller, rolled -up bill, thus performing an act of stealth wealth and performative humility simultaneously. It is an act of charity so twisted by social anxiety that it almost defies belief. The service ends. You file out of the church, back into the secular world. You came seeking a refuge from the endless game of social maneuvering. Instead, you found another, more sanctimonious version of it. It seems that, in Victorian London, there is no escape. Even when you are on your knees, you are still being judged on your position. Your life settles into a strange, bifurcated rhythm. By day, you are diligent, if unremarkable, clerk in Mr. Davies' office, learning the trade of importing tea and spices. By night, and on Sundays, you are a reluctant student of the upper classes, a man learning to navigate a world that simultaneously fascinates and repels him. You have become proficient in the art of being unobtrusive. You can enter a room, have a brief, forgettable conversation, and leave without committing a single social error. You have mastered the subtle nod, the correct handshake, and the art of staring intently at paintings. You are, in short, becoming a very boring man. And it is this very boringness, this mastery of social camouflage, that finally gets you noticed. You are at another evening gathering, this one at the home of a wealthy banker to whom Mr. Davies wishes to sell a large quantity of tea. The rooms are crowded, hot, and noisy. Your mission for the evening, as always, is to be a silent, well-dressed piece of furniture, a living testament to Mr. Davies' own respectability. You are standing near a large, uninspired portrait of the banker's wife, trying to look thoughtful, when a man approaches you. He is older, in his late 60s, with a thin, intelligent face and eyes that seem to see everything. He is impeccably dressed, but in a quiet, understated way that makes the flashier suits in the room look vulgar. You have seen him before at other gatherings, always on the periphery, always observing. You do not know his name, but you know he is important. He radiates a kind of quiet, absolute confidence that cannot be faked. You are Mr. Davies' young cousin, are you not? He says. His voice is calm and direct. You are so startled to be addressed by someone of his apparent stature that you almost forget your training. You manage a polite bow. I am, sir. I have seen you at several functions. The man continues, his gaze analytical. You are a quiet young man. You do not rush to offer your opinion. You do not push yourself forward. In a city full of noisy peacocks, you are something of a rarity, a sparrow, perhaps. You are not sure if this is a compliment or an insult. Is being a sparrow a good thing? Tell me, the man says, his eyes twinkling with a faint amusement. What do you truly think of this portrait? He gestures to the large painting of the banker's wife. This is a trap, a very dangerous trap. The correct, safe answer is to offer a vague, polite platitude. It is a fine likeness, sir, or the artist has captured her spirit admirably. But something in the man's direct, intelligent gaze makes you hesitate. He is not asking for the polite answer. He is testing you. He is asking for the real one. You take a risk, a huge risk. Well, sir, you say, your voice there. If I am to be honest, I would say that the artist is a competent technician, but he has failed to capture any sense of the lady's inner life. The brushwork is flat. The composition is derivative of Reynolds, and the overall effect is one of expensive, But so is competence. It is a portrait of a dress, not a person. The words hang in the air between you. You have just committed a cardinal sin. You have offered a strong, unvarnished, and deeply critical opinion. You have broken the rule of being forgettable. The man is silent for a long moment. He looks at the painting, then back at you. You brace yourself for the inevitable dismissal, the cold turn of the shoulder. Instead, a slow smile spreads across his face, a genuine, unfeigned smile. Precisely, he says. My own thoughts exactly. A portrait of a dress. Perfectly put. He extends his hand. My name is Sir Gideon Royce. The name hits you like a physical blow. Sir Gideon Royce. He is not just important. He is one of the wealthiest and most influential men in England. A legendary financier and a quiet, almost invisible kingmaker in the world of politics. He is famously reclusive, a man who despises the noisy peacock society he is forced to inhabit, and you have just, by sheer dumb luck, told him something he actually wanted to hear. This is the moment that historians and sociologists will argue about forever. Is social mobility in a class-minus-based society a complete myth? Or are there, on rare occasions, strange, unpredictable moments where a person can leapfrog the entire system? A moment where an act of genuine, uncalculated authenticity can achieve what 1,000 carefully planned maneuvers cannot. Was your honest answer a foolish risk that happened to pay off? Or did you, on some subconscious level, recognize a kindred spirit, a fellow observer, and know that he was the one person in the room to whom you could tell the truth? So Gideon Royce spends the next 20 minutes talking to you, ignoring the stream of important people trying to catch his eye. He asks for your opinions on other paintings, on books, on the state of the nation. You speak honestly, your initial fear replaced by the exhilarating freedom of a real conversation. He does not treat you like a junior clerk. He treats you like an intellectual equal. When he finally takes his leave, he gives you a small, conspiratorial nod. I find myself in need of a new private secretary. Young man, he says, my current one is a fool who admires that portrait. Perhaps you might call on me at my home next week. He gives you his card, turns, and disappears into the crowd, leaving you standing by the portrait of the dress, your mind spinning. You have been noticed, and your life is about to change completely. The invitation from Sir Gideon Royce is a royal summons. It changes everything. When you mention the encounter to Mr. Davies the next day, his usual gruffness evaporates, replaced by a look of stunned, almost fearful, respect. Sir Gideon Royce, he says, his voice barely a whisper. My boy, do you have any idea who you were talking to? That man does not simply own banks. He owns the men who own the banks. Your visit to Sir Gideon's residence is unlike any other you have made. His house is not a flashy mansion. It is a discreet, almost severe-looking building in a quiet Mayfair square. The butler who opens the door is not a mournful statue of disapproval. He is a quiet, efficient man who greets you by name and shows you directly into a library. And what a library! It is a 2-story cathedral of books, smelling of old paper, leather, and wisdom. Sir Gideon is there, dressed not in a formal suit, but in a comfortable looking velvet smoking jacket. He is reading, and he motions for you to sit without rising. There is no pretense here, no social maneuvering. It is the quiet, absolute confidence of a man who has no one left to impress. Your interview is not an interview. It is a conversation. He asks you nothing about your background or your qualifications. He asks you about your thoughts. He wants to know what you think of the new railway boom, of the political situation in France, of a recent controversial novel. You speak your mind, emboldened by your previous encounter. He listens, occasionally interjecting with a sharp, insightful question. You feel less like a job applicant and more like a student undergoing a rigorous, exhilarating oral examination. At the end of it, he looks at you over the top of his spectacles. You have a good mind, young man, uncluttered by the nonsense they teach at the universities. And more importantly, you have learned to see. Most people in this city are blind. They see only what they are supposed to see. You see the truth. You start on Monday. And just like that, you are no longer a clerk in the tea trade. You are the private secretary to one of the most powerful men in the country. Your salary is tripled. You are given a handsome set of rooms in Sir Gideon's own house. You have not just been accepted by the system. You have been lifted to its highest echelons by a man who operates outside its petty rules. But just as you are basking in the glow of your incredible good fortune, the world throws you a curveball. A moment arrives that demonstrates how all the carefully constructed etiquette, all the rigid rules of snubbing and acknowledging, can be instantly vaporized by the one thing that society cannot control: genuine crisis. You are walking with Sir Gideon through a crowded part of the city. He is pointing out a building he intends to purchase. The street is a chaos of carriages, carts, and pedestrians. Suddenly, there is a scream. A horse pulling a hansom cab, startled by a backfiring omnibus, rears up in terror. The driver is thrown from his high perch. The cab, with a passenger inside, lurches forward, out of control, directly towards a woman and her small child who are frozen in fear in the middle of the street. Time seems to slow down. The entire, intricate social theater of the street vanishes. There are no classes, no rules, no etiquette. There is only a terrified woman, a screaming child, and a ton of metal and horseflesh about to collide with them. Without a moment's hesitation, you react. You are a country boy. After all, you know horses. You sprint forward, ignoring the risk to yourself. You grab the runaway horse's bridle, pulling with all your might, turning its head, using your own weight to try and slow its momentum. For a terrifying second, you think you will be trampled, but it works. The horse, its panic interrupted by the new, firm hand on its rein, swerves at the last possible second. The cab misses the woman and child by inches, its wheel shattering against a lamppost. The street, which had been a cacophony of noise, falls into a stunned silence. And then, chaos erupts. People rush forward. The rules are gone. A wealthy man in a top hat is helping the cab driver to his feet. A fishmonger is comforting the crying child. A lady in a fine silk dress has her arm around the sobbing mother. For a brief, shining moment, the entire, rigid, hierarchical structure of London society has dissolved into a shared, massive, and deeply compassionate humanity. Sir Gideon is at your side. He helps you soothe the trembling horse. He looks at you, then at the scene around you. He sees the lord and fishmonger, the lady and the street urchin, all working together, all their social differences forgotten in the face of a genuine emergency. You see, my boy, he says, his voice filled with a strange, melancholic irony. It takes a near-minus disaster to make us all behave like human beings. The moment passes. A policeman arrives. Order is restored. The invisible walls of class and etiquette begin to reconstruct themselves. The lord remembers he is a lord. The lady remembers her dress is getting dirty. The shared humanity evaporates as quickly as it appeared. But you will never forget. Historians will often overlook these moments, focusing on the grand structures of society. But you have just learned the most important lesson of all. The entire, elaborate system of rules and rituals that governs this world. The system you have tried so hard to master is a fragile illusion. It is a play that everyone has tacitly agreed to perform, and it only takes one runaway horse to bring the whole theatre crashing down. Your new life as Sir Gideon's secretary is a world away from anything you have ever known. Your days are no longer filled with the mundane tasks of a junior clerk, but with matters of immense consequence. You manage Sir Gideon's correspondence, drafting letters to cabinet ministers and international bankers. You sit in on his meetings, a silent observer as he negotiates deals that will shape the course of industry and empire. You research investments, analyze political developments, and act as his eyes and ears in a city he despises but must command. You have been given a backstage pass to the machinery of power, and what you see is that the rules that govern the public world, the rules of etiquette that so tormented, you are almost entirely absent here. In the private offices and smoking rooms where the real decisions are made, no one cares about which trick you use. They care about your intelligence, your discretion, and your utility. You have entered a new game with a different, more ruthless set of rules. And you are good at it. Your training in the art of observation, honed during your long months as a social outcast, served you well. You know how to listen. You know how to be invisible. You know how to read the subtle signals in a person's tone of voice or the flicker of an eye. The skills you developed to survive the drawing room are, you discover, invaluable in the boardroom. You also become, by necessity, a master of the very social arts you once feared. As the Gideon's representative, you are now a person of consequence. People who once would have cut you dead now seek you out, desperate for a sliver of your employer's attention. You are the gatekeeper, the conduit to power, and you learn to play the part with a chilling efficiency. You can now perform the cut, direct with the cool precision of a surgeon. You can dismiss a hopeful petitioner with a single, polite, and utterly final phrase. You know how to use the weight of silence to your advantage. You have a different visiting card now, one that simply reads your name, Office of Sir Gideon Royce. It is one of the most powerful pieces of paper in London. One afternoon, you are leaving a meeting in the city when you see him. It's Peterson, the man who delivered your very first crushing snub in Hyde Park. He is with a group of other young men, all clerks and junior financiers. He sees you, and his face changes. The old arrogance is gone, replaced by a look of nervous, hopeful recognition. He detaches himself from his group and approaches you, his hand half minus extended. My dear fellow, he begins, a greasy, familiar smile on his face. How splendid to see you. I was just telling my colleagues about our old friendship. You stop. You look at him. You look at his outstretched hand. And you feel nothing. No anger. No desire for revenge. Just a kind of weary detachment. He is a piece on a board you are no longer playing on. You give him a slight, almost imperceptible nod. The kind of nod a man gives to his butler. Peterson, you say, your voice cool and even. You do not take his hand. You do not stop walking. You simply acknowledge his existence with a single word and then move past him, leaving him standing there with his hand hanging foolishly in the air. You have not cut him. That would be too dramatic, too emotional. You have done something far more effective. You have classified him. You have, with a single word and a slight inclination of your head, put him firmly unpublicly in his place. You have shown him that you are now the one who dictates the terms of engagement. As you get into the waiting carriage that Sir Gideon now provides for you, you look back. Peterson is still standing there, his friends now looking at him with a mixture of pity and contempt. He has been diminished, and you did. You have finally, completely, mastered the game. You think about the great historical debate on social mobility. Some argue that the Victorian era, with its industrial boom and expanding empire, was a time of unprecedented opportunity, a time when a man of talent and ambition could rise to the top, regardless of his birth. Others argue that this is a convenient myth, that for every one man who succeeded, 1,000 work rushed by a rigid and unforgiving class system. Your own story seems to support both arguments at once. You have risen. Yes, your success has been meteoric. But it was not due to a fair and open system. It was due to a series of accidents, a lucky break, and a willingness to adapt to, and eventually master, a cruel and arbitrary set of rules. You did not succeed because of the system. You succeeded in spite of it. And now, you are a part of it. You are a gatekeeper. You are one of the ones who decide who gets seen and who remains invisible. The realization brings you a profound and deeply unsettling sense of quiet. Years pass. You are no longer the wide minor-eyed country boy who stepped off the train at Paddington Station. You are a man of influence and position. As Sir Gideon's most trusted advisor, you move in the highest circles of power. You have a handsome house of your own, a small but impeccably curated art collection, and a tailor who knows not to ask about the price. You are, by every external measure, a success. The world that once sought to exclude you now clamours for your attention. Your mastery of the social arts is absolute. You can navigate a Dutch-assessed dinner party with the same effortless ease as you can dissect a corporate balance sheet. You know exactly whose hand to shake and whose eye to avoid. You can deploy a subtle compliment or a chilling snub with equal precision. The silent, brutal language of Victorian society is now your native tongue. You are fluent in the grammar of the glance, the syntax of the snub. One evening, you are attending an opera at Covent Garden. You are in Sir Gideon's private box, a plush velvet cocoon that separates you from the common herd. During the interval, you are scanning the crowd below with a pair of Mother Minus of Minus pearl opera glasses. You are not looking for anyone in particular. You are simply observing, as is your habit, and then your glasses find a familiar face in the crowd. It is the Davies' daughter, Eleanor, the young woman you so clumsily tried to ask for a dance all those years ago. She is older now, married to a respectable but an exciting barrister. She has lost the bloom of youth, but she has acquired the poised, slightly weary look of a London matron. She is laughing at something her husband has said, a polite, practiced laugh that does not quite reach her eyes, and as you look at her, you feel a strange, unexpected pang of something, not regret, exactly, more like a faint, ghostly echo of a different life. A life where you were not a powerful secretary, but a young man in love. A life where a dance was just a dance, and not a complex social negotiation. The moment passes. You lower your opera glasses. The feeling is gone, replaced by the cool, analytical detachment that has become your default state. After the opera, as you are waiting for your carriage, a young man approaches you. He is nervous, ambitious, and trying very hard to look like he belongs. You have seen him before. He is a junior secretary to some minor government minister. He bows a little too deeply. "Sir," he says, his voice earnest, "forgive my intrusion. My name is Worthington. I was wondering if I might have a moment of your time next week to discuss a small matter of mutual interest." You look at him. You see the anxiety in his eyes, the desperate hope for a connection, for a foothold in the world you now command. You see yourself, all those years ago, standing before Mr. Davies in his stuffy office. You have two choices. You can be kind. You can offer him a moment of your time, a small word of encouragement. Or you can do what the system expects you to do. You can put him in his place. "I am very busy, Mr. Worthington," you say, your voice polite, but with a clear, unmistakable note of dismissal. "My schedule is handled by my assistant. You may send him a letter." You turn away before he can respond. Stepping into your waiting carriage, the door closes, shutting out the noise of the street and the sight of the young man's crestfallen face. You have just performed a perfect, effortless, and entirely unnecessary act of social cruelty. It was the correct move. It was the powerful move, and it was utterly meaningless. You lean back against the cushioned seat as the carriage rattles through the dark, gaslit street. You have won the game. You have mastered all the awkward etiquette. You know precisely how to ignore someone, how to elevate someone, how to crush someone. You have built a fortress of social invulnerability around yourself, and sitting inside it, you realize, with a sudden, chilling clarity, that you are completely and utterly alone. The very rules you mastered to protect yourself have become your prison. You are surrounded by people, but you are connected to no one. You have become so adept at the art of ignoring others that you have, in the end, erased yourself. The carriage moves smoothly through the sleeping city. The rhythmic seal-upping of the horses' hooves, a soft, steady beat in the immense quiet of the night. You close your eyes. The plush velvet of the seat a distant, unremarkable comfort. The weight of your success, the endless performance of being you, begins to feel very heavy. A well-minus tailored coat that you can no longer take off. The sharp edges of your ambition have been worn smooth by the years, leaving only a quiet, unawake. The faces and moments of your journey flicker behind your closed eyelids. A bewildered country friend on a train platform, a desperate young man under the gas lights, a girl laughing a practiced laugh, all of them fading, dissolving into the gentle, rocking motion of the carriage. The world outside is a blur of soft, indistinct shapes and muted light. You are no longer moving toward anything, no longer striving or fighting. You are simply being carried along by the slow, inevitable current of the night. A deep, profound weariness settles into your bones, a tiredness that has been years in the making. The intricate rules of the game, the anxieties, the triumphs, they all seem very distant now, like a story you read about someone else a long time ago. The only thing that feels real is this gentle motion, this quiet darkness, this slow, inexorable drift toward a place of rest. Your breathing deepens, sissening with the rhythm of the horse's gait, as the last vestiges of the waking world recede, leaving you in the peaceful, silent, and solitary comfort of your own enclosed space.